I'm going to give a countdown of 3, 2, 1. You're on.
Welcome to the WalterFootball.com Fantasy Football Show. We're discussing Week 6 fantasy football, joined by Michael Hofer. How are you, Michael?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, Walter, because some people have complained that I'm bragging about my teams. Well, all three of my keeper leagues I lost this week, thanks to Julio Jones and Mike Evans.
Yeah, it's been rough for the top receivers, and I think that's something we should discuss this week. But we'll get to that in a second. Also joined by Kim Calhoun. Kim, how are you?
Hi, Walter. I'm doing great, and looking forward to week 6 and the discussions that we're going to have about all the footballs and our next picks. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's a lot to discuss this week. There are 4 teams on bye and 2 play early in the London game. So, if you're on the West Coast, you have to wake up at 6:20 a.m. to make sure all your lineup is set. So, condolences there. But Michael, I don't know if you wanted to, if you had some topics you wanted to discuss. I have some as well, but if you wanted to lead it off, go ahead.
Okay, I'll mention 3 real quick. You said you weren't interested in a handshake between Baker Mayfield and Richard Sherman. I get kind of tired of Richard Sherman being described as being so smart. I think that's like a racial remark, and it's stupid. But this guy, he got a lot of national attention when he made the defensive play in Michael Crabtree, and that I can understand being the adrenaline of the moment. Then he asked to go on the show with Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless on false pretenses, where he just attacked Skip. And then after Monday night's game, he said that Baker Mayfield didn't shake hands with him, and there's video showing that he did. So that just was downright dumb. I don't understand that. As for tight end O.J. Howard, he caught as many passes. Well, I'm sorry. He caught the ball at the Rays playoff game, and that's as many passes as he caught on Sunday. So that's kind of interesting. And then I think the most important topic of the week is David Johnson. I don't think he's healthy, and I think Chase Edmonds may be an excellent pickup.
I completely agree with Chase Edmonds. We'll see. If David Johnson is active, then I don't think you can really start Chase Edmonds. But if David Johnson is ruled out, and if he's not practicing at all this week, I think Chase Edmonds is a good play. He showed some of his potential against the Bengals this past week. He looked pretty good. Actually, I think he had more yards after contact per play than David Johnson did. Granted,
Right.
it was a small sample size, but Edmonds looked pretty good. So I think he's worth picking up if David Johnson is banged up. We'll have to see what the injury reports unearth. It's only Wednesday, and I think the important injury report days on Thursday and Friday. So we'll have to see if David Johnson's practicing then. But yeah, like I said, Edmonds should be picked up if Johnson is banged up. And even so, even if you have Johnson, you should pick up Edmonds just in case.
Well, if you wait, you're not going to get him. So
Exactly.
That's why I went ahead and acted.
Exactly, yeah. So I think it's a good kind of insurance policy you can take out if you have David Johnson. And even if you don't, if you
Right.
have some running back issues, you can start Edmonds if David Johnson's out.
Totally agreed.
Yeah, and it's a good matchup too. They're playing Atlanta this week. Atlanta is one of the worst defenses in the NFL. They've been shredded by everyone this year. The outlook's good for Edmonds. You mentioned O.J. Howard earlier. He's been very disappointing. I recommended him as a drop. I think either this week or 2 weeks ago. I've kind of recommended just kind of holding him because of his talent. But Bruce Arians, the head coach of the Buccaneers, he just doesn't have a good history of having tight ends be productive. And I thought that might change this year because O.J. Howard is so talented. I thought that maybe Arians would kind of change his offensive philosophy to incorporate Howard more into the offense. But Howard's been blocking. Like, he's on the field, but he's just blocking more. So he's just very unappealing. So unless you're playing him in a great matchup, and this week is not, I don't see any reason to own him. Do you agree?
Well, yeah, and Jameis has always had a major connection with Cameron Brate for whatever reason, so that doesn't help either, especially in the red zone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw in week 1, Cameron Brate had 2 touchdowns, but they were called back. So Cameron Brate's stats could be much better than O.J. Howard's right now. And Arians even criticized Howard about a month ago.
Yeah.
He said, he kind of he just kind of talked negatively about him. And I thought maybe that was a sign that Howard was going to break out the next game, and that didn't happen. and Howard has just been a huge disappointment. So yeah, if you're holding on to him, you should probably look for better options. I think tight end is one of those positions where you can just play matchups any week. Like we saw Greg Olsen go off against Arizona, and just kind of that sort of deal. You can just pick up a tight end against a good matchup, and they'll be productive.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Greg Olsen because I've been reading some sites are recommending dropping him. How do you feel about that?
Well, I don't think he's necessarily rosterable right now. I don't think he's someone you need to have on your team. But the fact that he plays against Tampa this week, I think it's a bad time to say he should be dropped because we saw what Greg Olsen did against the Buccaneers in week 2.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay has been very weak to tight ends all year. So I like Olsen's outlook this week. I don't know what Tampa's schedule is after, or Carolina's schedule is after this. I know they have a bye. So maybe after this week you can drop Greg Olsen. Or, if you're cunning enough, and if Greg Olsen has a great game, you can try to trade him. And maybe you can fool someone into trading for him. But, yeah, I don't think you need to roster him, though.
Yeah, I agree because he actually looked hurt when he played against the Buccaneers, and he still had a great game. So I think that's a good strategy on your part.
Yeah, he's an older player, and like I said, tight end is something you just want to play matchups with. There are certain teams that funnel all the production to tight ends, and there are certain teams that play extremely well to tight ends. You just want to avoid the tough matchups and just play the good matchups.
Agreed.
Yeah. And you mentioned the Baker Mayfield, Richard Sherman kind of drama at the beginning. I wrote to you earlier that I might be the only person in America who doesn't care about this.
Right.
I think it's so stupid. It doesn't matter to me. Like, it has nothing to do with fantasy. Like, you can't factor this into anything. It just seems strange. I don't understand what's happening.
Yeah, why would the guy lie? Now, we understand coaches lie, but why would Richard Sherman lie? That just is just very odd. And I heard sports shows today still chastising Baker for not shaking his hand. I guess they didn't see the video that they did shake hands. So it's just downright weird.
Well, do we get clarity on that, though? Because, like, the video that we saw, their back was to the camera, so we didn't really see what was happening. It looked like they shook hands.
Well, they did, and then he hugged George Kittle right after that. And Baker has tweeted he was silent for a change, but he couldn't stay silent. He finally had to say, hey, I was finally vindicated by video for once. It was maybe a funny remark considering the time he ran from the cops.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had cops trying to stop him, and Baker tried to run. And Baker's not the fastest guy in the NFL. So the cops caught him. You know what cops do when they catch you.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like I said, I really don't care about this. When I saw like Baker Mayfield trending, I was thinking, oh no, did he tear his ACL or something? Like, is he out? But it was a stupid story. So.
And Richard has apologized. So Richard admitted that he did shake hands. So that's just weird. Very weird.
I don't know why he would lie about that. It's
right.
Strange. So. Let's. I feel like we should talk about more relevant.
Yeah, let's talk about some. Are the Eagles? Are they looking healthier this week?
Yes.
They are looking. Well, they have been healthier ever since they got Alshon Jeffrey back in Week 4 against the Packers in that Thursday night game. So they've been playing better since. They started 1-2. They won 2 in a row. They still don't have Deshaun Jackson back. That's an issue. So. I'm hearing Deshaun Jackson will likely return in Week 7, but he probably won't play this week. The Eagles still have secondary issues, though. Their top 2 cornerbacks are out, and I think that just bodes very well for Minnesota's receivers. And we discussed last week that Adam Thielen was kind of the squeaky wheel kind of narrative where he complained and then he just had a big game against a horrible Giants defense. Stephon Diggs was the other receiver who complained, and he didn't have that good of a statistical game. So I think this might be a week where Stephon Diggs kind of goes nuts, and he has a great matchup against the Eagle corners. So I actually like both Viking receivers against Philadelphia this week. I think this is a game where the Vikings could win this game, and it'll just be a good passing performance by Kirk Cousins. We saw Cousins play well against the Eagles last year, and the Eagles have way more secondary issues than they did last year. So I really like that matchup. What do you think, Michael?
I got to say that I am very impressed with your team. I was really down on the Packers after they let the Eagles gash them in the second half. and I thought these problems might not be resolvable. But after watching what the Packers did against Zeke and the Cowboys, yeah, the Eagles are a Super Bowl contender without a doubt if they can solve their secondary problems.
Yeah, well, make one thing clear: they're not my team. I happen to live right outside of Philadelphia, but I'm not an Eagles fan.
Really? Well, who are you a fan of?
I'm a fan of my fantasy teams and the teams I stick with.
He's a fan of the player,
Yeah.
not the team.
Wow.
This is why I kind of like this. I've always picked players, not teams. So yeah.
Yeah, there's certain players I like, certain coaches I like, and of course I'm going to root for the teams I bet on and the players I have in daily fantasy. So those are I've kind of been I haven't been really a fan of a team for a long time. So the Eagles are not my team, but I do agree that they're definitely a Super Bowl contender. In fact, they were my team to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs at the beginning of the year. It was originally Eagles Colts before Andrew Luck's retirement.
So who's the lead back there?
There's no league back. It's Jordan Howard and Miles Sanders, and they're going to split evenly. You know, kind of like New England does with Sony Michel and James White. It's kind of like the same philosophy. So
maddening.
yeah, it's tough for fantasy, but in real life it makes sense. I mean, these guys both have their strengths and weaknesses, and it makes sense that the Eagles would use them accordingly. It's kind of like the Patriots. It's a tough situation to figure out because if you have Sony Michel, there are some games where he does nothing for the Patriots, and then there are games where he has 25 carries and 2 touchdowns, and he even saw receptions this week. So it's all based on the game plan. And it's extremely difficult to figure out from a fantasy perspective. You're probably better off not even worrying about it. Same thing with the 49ers, Matt Breida and Tevin Coleman. It's the same sort of situation. And you just have to guess. And if you played the 49ers Browns showdown slate on DraftKings or another daily fantasy site, Matt Breida was the winning captain. So you had to guess on who the running back was going to be, and then you had to guess on the other players. So it's very difficult.
Well, Kyle Shanahan is just a genius, and the Falcons have had a losing record since he left as offensive coordinator.
Yeah, they've had a sharp decline. All their stats this year, by the way, have been in garbage time. Like the stats look impressive. Matt Ryan is on pace to throw for about 5,300 yards, but it's all been garbage time. It's not real. Their offense is not nearly as strong as it's been in the past, especially with Kyle Shanahan. And I love the 49ers this year. I mean, I thought they would be good. I was not sure about Jimmy Garoppolo's knee, and I think Garoppolo is actually the weakness of that team. The rest of their roster is amazing, I think. Their offensive line's great. They run the ball extremely well. They have some nice weapons in George Kittle. Deebo Samuel is coming into his own. We'll see what happens with Dante Pettis, but he has talent. And their defense is incredible. We just saw what they did to the Browns. The Browns could not move the ball on the 49ers at all. And I think the 49ers are going to make a lot of teams look pretty bad this year.
Pettis didn't help his case by dropping that ball, the one ball that Garoppolo did throw that was good. And Joey Bosa just amazed me. I was surprised to see him do that well this quickly, and I kind of like the way he did the plant the flag thing on Baker Mayfield.
Yeah. Nick Bosa is a tremendous player.
Oh yeah, Nick Bosa. Sorry.
Yeah. It's confusing. Yeah, both guys did well. Nick Bosa is a phenomenal talent, and yeah, he's putting it all together. They also have Dee Ford and DeForest Buckner on the defensive line. Their pass rush is phenomenal, and they're backed up by a very good secondary. They cover tight ends well. The only thing their defense seems to not do extremely well is cover the slot. We saw Jarvis Landry have a solid game, but they completely shut down Odell Beckham. Like Beckham couldn't get open, and the Cleveland's offense was just kind of decimated. They looked terrible. It's kind of like how Tampa looked in Week 1, where Jameis Winston threw those 2 pick sixes. And remember, Week 2, Cincinnati, Andy Dalton was coming off a 400-yard game, and the Bengals couldn't do anything either. So we've seen the 49ers just dismantle offenses every single week. They had a bye earlier. This week they play the Rams. It'll be interesting because the Rams have a lot of firepower, but they're going to be playing the best defense in the NFL in my mind. So I'm not high on any Ram this week except for Cooper Kupp. As I said, they don't defend slot receivers that well, so I think Kupp could still play well.
Yeah, he should blow up.
Yeah. So I don't know if you agree with that take that the 49ers have the best defense in the league.
Yeah, no, I tried to keep my mouth shut. We got New England and we got Buffalo. They're doing extremely well, and I'm not going to take. It's hard for me to go against the Bill Belichick defense. It's the best one he's ever had with the
Yeah,
New England.
it is great, but if you think about it, like who have they played really? I mean, they played an injured Ben Roethlisberger. They played against the Dolphins, who are as I keep saying, the worst team in NFL history. They played against the Jets, and Luke Falk is pathetic. They played against the Bills, and the Bills really don't move the ball that well. And they played against the Redskins. They haven't really been tested yet, I don't think. And I do want to. I'm not saying the Patriots aren't great or anything. Like, don't get me wrong. I think if you're ranking the defenses, the Patriots are in the top 5 for sure. Maybe probably even in the top 3. But I mean, the 49ers have had a much tougher slate so far for their schedule in terms of playing offenses. And I think what they've done compared to New England has been way more impressive. So I can't wait to see how they play against the Rams.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So in my mind, I think the biggest news story this week, you mentioned David Johnson. There's another injury that I think is extremely important, and that would be to Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes on Sunday night, he killed a lot of survivor entries. I believe there were 800 or so left in our contest that we run on our website, and I think 400 had the Chiefs, so just half of them were knocked out, including me. Yeah, I'm done. So I used the Eagles in week 1, and I was penalized for that because I didn't have the Eagles available for week 5.
Yeah, I took the Eagles.
Right. Yeah, that was a great move. But I thought the Chiefs, had Mahomes not gotten injured, I think they would have won that game. But Mahomes was limping around starting in the second quarter, and he really struggled. He still completed some passes, but he definitely wasn't himself. And then on top of that, you have the offensive line. They were already down their left tackle, and they saw their left guard get injured. And the replacement they had, I don't know if he was wearing cement shoes or not, but he couldn't move at all. And he just let the pass rushers just zoom by him. And Mahomes, being limited with his ankle, he couldn't really avoid the pass rushers. So he was taking a lot of sacks that he usually wouldn't take. And he still finished with 300 or so yards, but only 100 or so after halftime. So he wasn't really himself. I'm wondering, what do you think about Mahomes going forward? Maybe not like late in the year, but in the next couple of weeks.
I love the guy, but when you look at the most important games of his life, he's lost them, although it wasn't his fault because D Ford was offside. That game was already won. But when it's come to important games, especially the game against San Diego, where they could have lost home field advantage, he ended up losing those games, and he lost to the Rams in that shootout too. So I think he's the best young quarterback in the NFL, but for some reason, Andy Reid seems to be a bridesmaid instead of a bride more often than not.
Well, I don't know if I want to blame Mahomes for that. Like that Rams game, they scored 51 points. Like, it's hard to blame Mahomes for that.
He threw interceptions like Brett Favre in that game.
He did. I mean, Mahomes is a risk taker for sure.
Yeah.
But they were playing a very good defense, and they were playing Sean McVay, Wade Phillips. The Rams were billed as the best team in the NFL at that point. And it was in LA. It was on the road, and it was still a 3-point game, and they still scored 51 points. I know that he had some errant passes for sure, but like 51 points, like I don't want to criticize him for that. And that Chargers game, I think that was just an amazing Phillip Rivers comeback. I mean, Rivers was just tremendous.
Yeah. Yeah, and with this throwing motion, it's amazing to see him do that. It's just, I totally agree. That was just Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, by the way, Rivers, that team is just dreadful around him this year. They're just horrible. I know they're 2-3. Yeah, a lot of injuries. They're 2-3. Only one. One of their wins was against the Dolphins, so that doesn't really count. Their other win was.
The Dolphins just don't get a break here. Unnecessary roughness. Not.
They're the worst team of all time. So I'm not
of all time.
Yeah, of all time. Yeah.
You just remind me of another bad thing. I told you about my problems with Darren McFadden, that Tyler Eifert was going to make that decision if he was going to be my next Darren McFadden. He had an easy matchup, and he did nothing. So Tyler Eifert, I'm never taking him again. And now I'm thinking Hunter Henry may be that next guy. The guy's always injured. What do you think about Hunter on the Chargers?
Well, it is a small sample size. I mean, we haven't seen like that many years of Hunter
Because
Henry.
he's always hurt.
No, you're right. I mean, he hasn't been reliable yet, for sure, and it's very difficult to draft him in year long. I'm just thinking in terms of daily fantasy. I wouldn't be afraid to play him in daily fantasy, but he's difficult to trust in year long. So
and I'm stuck with him.
Yeah, and you know, tight ends. As I said before, you can just grab tight ends off the waiver wire. And
oh my God, no, I disagree on that too, because I just lost Hawkinson, and there's nobody left. I ended up taking Jesse James.
I think it depends on how deep your league is. I'm able to pick up a decent tight end any week, and like as you said, that other show, whatever it was, they were recommending dropping Greg Olsen, and so
yeah.
If like a Greg Olsen's available, you can just pick him up.
And they're saying get Jared Everett, you know, and I don't think the sample size in him is good enough to rely on him. And they're not going to throw that much. The Rams are not going to keep throwing 100 passes a game.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the matchup. Like, I don't like Everett this week, but you know, if they're playing a better team or a worse team, then I think you could definitely start Everett. It really, again, it depends on the matchup. And like, for example, Will Dissly was someone you could have picked up earlier.
Oh my God, yeah, he saved me.
Hawkinson, Hawkinson, you could have picked up. Darren Waller, you could have picked up. Like, these guys just come out of nowhere, and they produce. And I think tight end is the easiest position to fill. In fact, I didn't draft a tight end earlier than the 13th round in any league that I was in. I just
wow.
And I definitely have an unorthodox draft philosophy. I don't even draft defense or kickers. I just I leave those spots blank, and I just worry about that the day before the game start. So that's something you know. I don't know if you want to get into that, but the year-long pre-draft philosophy. But my take on that is if you're drafting kickers and defenses, you're hurting your upside. I would rather take guys you can hit a home run with, and you know, just see how they do, see if they survive final cuts, and then the day before the game start, you just drop the guys you don't want anymore, and you pick up your kickers and defenses.
Yeah, kicker, you recommended last week to take a guy in a dome, and I've been having problems with my kickers since Gostkowski got dropped. And after watching Monday night's game, I came to an interesting decision that might be crazy. I'm thinking that San Francisco's got a good offense, and that their snapper and their rookie holders are not going to be idiots all year, that they're actually going to practice this week. And Robbie Gould is one of the highest paid kickers in the league, so I picked up Robbie Gould. Is that crazy?
No, it's not crazy at all. I mean, they're going to be playing in LA. It's basically like a dome. I mean, there's not going to be any weather issues in Los Angeles. It's a good offense, and it's good conditions. So, you know, it's kind of like the same thing. And as I said before, kickers just come and go, but Robbie Gould is one of those guys who's been around for a long time, and he's been consistent. He's one of those guys you can trust, like Justin Tucker. But these guys who just come and go, like I think we discussed Joey Sly a week ago or maybe 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and, that's what I took.
Yeah, Joey Sly just had a bad game. So these guys, they come out of nowhere, they kick well, everyone praises them, and then they miss a bunch of field goals. Everyone thinks they suck. And then they get cut, and then they reemerge, and then they do well, and then the whole cycle repeats itself. It's the same thing. That's why I really didn't care about the kickers. I don't even worry about it. I just pick up the highest recommended guy on whatever platform I'm using.
The guy in the waiver wire with the most points is that gay guy in Tampa, and I haven't taken him since he missed the winning field goal against the Giants. So he's done well, except for missing winning field goals. And I just hate having guys that miss winning field goals. I can't trust them.
I thought that's fun. That gay guy. It's Matt Gay. Matt Gay.
Yeah, Matt Gay. That's right.
Yeah. No, he's my kicker in some leagues.
Really? Wow. Bravo.
That's how little I care about kickers. I really don't care.
Wow. I'm still mad at him for missing the kick against the Giants.
See, that's why he doesn't go for kickers, because you get mad at him.
I sure do. Yeah, I was mad at Mason Crosby a couple years ago. Oh my God. Yeah.
All right. So we touched on Mahomes. Fantasy wise, I mean, we're talking about Mahomes, like, you know, how great he is. But what do you think about him fantasy wise this week?
So, well, go ahead, Michael. Give it a shot.
Well, I think it's a good matchup, and it all depends upon his health. And what's the other guy going to do? I mean, I think it's going to be a shootout.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Kim.
Well, Mahomes, he's been showing some good, like you said, 51 points. I mean, he's been doing good. It just, I don't know. I don't know the other guy well enough. I've been watching Patrick Mahomes. If he's not feeling well, I think it might not be a good game.
Deshaun Watson is a winner. I can tell you that. He doesn't have much of a line protecting him, but he is a winner.
Yeah.
Yeah,
quick story on Deshaun Watson. I heard that from kind of a source of mine when he visited the Texans in the pre-draft process. He, like everyone on that team, was following him around, even though he wasn't on the roster yet. Like he was already like that team leader, and he wasn't even on the team. Like that's how much respect he commands. And he's just he's a phenomenal leader. He is a winner, I believe. He's a phenomenal talent. I just wish they protected him better because his offensive line is hard. But he's a smart guy too. He's really I think stepped up his game mentally and is dissecting defenses now. He seems like one of those guys who really gets it. He has it, I think. And so I think it's pretty rare to have that. And I think there are only like 10 to 12 quarterbacks in the league who can do that.
He's a philanthropist too. You got to give him a lot of credit for that. No, he seriously is. He gave the ladies at work in the food area for the Texans, gave her like a check for $20,000.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Well, I mean, it sounds like he appreciates the people that are in his environment, and they see that, and they respect that. And it's hard to find a leader who can do that. How well did he play last week?
He's phenomenal. He was the number
I missed that.
He was the number one quarterback last week. I believe he was the second place's quarterback in the $1 million contest. Teddy Bridgewater was the quarterback in the number one because he had.
Oh my God!
Yeah, no one owned Bridgewater, and he had 4 touchdowns.
Nobody.
But no, Watson was terrific. He had 5 touchdowns. He was
wow.
He's phenomenal, and he actually helped me take down a contest on DraftKings with Will Fuller.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Oh, Will Fuller. Yeah, bravo to that man. He got 60-some points in my league. Yeah,
Thanks,
one league I had McCaffrey, Aaron Jones, and Will Fuller get 60 points. I started them all, and I still didn't win the matchup. It's unbelievable.
That's brutal.
Well, it was a horrible week. I mean, there was nothing I could do.
So how hard would it be for me to add Watson to my list this week?
Not hard at all. I mean, I think he's the 3rd most expensive quarterback this week behind Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. Watson's someone I would absolutely recommend this week. He's, as you can see on the screen, he's my number 1 quarterback. And we'll get to the positional rankings soon. But I love Watson this week. And I was asking about Mahomes because this is the first week I don't have Mahomes number 1. Mahomes is injured, as I said. And, it's maybe he heals up and is 100%. That's certainly a possibility. But the way he was limping around is a bit concerning. And so he's the most expensive quarterback on DraftKings at $7,500. So I don't know if I'm going to get to him a lot. Maybe a lineup here and there, but I'm not going to use him too much. Yeah. All right,
well, and like you said, sometimes you have to wait until Thursday to find out what their what their medical conditions are. Maybe he's just kind of hit his wall at this point, right? Where mid-season, this is sometimes can be where the players are saying, I've just kind of hit my wall a little bit, and it's a matter of whether you break through that wall or not. So, he's had a good season, though. He's had a real good season.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think he's one of the top 2 MVP leaders right now, along with Russell Wilson. He's been phenomenal, but that ankle injury is worrying. So we'll see what happens. And you're right. The injury reports late in the week will be telling. I can't imagine him sitting out, but if he's practicing fully, maybe that's a sign that he's healthy. But you never know. You never know with these teams.
But you got Lamar. Yeah, you got Lamar and Tommy with good matchups this week too. So there's an awful lot of choices at quarterback.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's definitely true. So there's two other topics I want to discuss. Hopkins, DeAndre Hopkins, Julio Jones, Odell Beckham. They've been major disappointments this year. They've been double teamed a lot.
Mike Evans too. Oh my God, Mike Evans. Yeah.
Mike Evans has, in the first 2 weeks of the season he was sick or something, so that's understandable. And then he went off against the Giants. He had a tremendous game, and then last week against Marshawn Lattimore he didn't catch a single pass. That's just a matchup that Marshawn Lattimore has just owned him over the years.
Okay.
I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I mentioned these guys, Hopkins, Julio, and Beckham. They haven't been producing, but they're so talented. And
trade for them, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I've gotten some questions. Someone asked me yesterday. They're like, I have DeAndre Hopkins. Should I trade him for, I think it was like Aaron Jones or something? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. You should be trading for Hopkins. I know you have Hopkins on your team, but in other leagues, you should be trading for these guys because there could be stretches in the second half of the year where they just go nuts, and you want to have them. You never, the old saying is buy low, sell high. You don't want to sell low on these guys. You want to buy low and try to get them as cheaply as possible.
Okay.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to touch on before we get to the rankings and any questions we might have, is a concept I've kind of like come up with called like the Fool's Gold game. And it was last week, I believe that was the Bengals Cardinals game. And everyone thought that the Bengals and Cardinals would have just great fantasy points just because both defenses are terrible and both offenses have produced in garbage time. And yet, outside of Tyler Boyd, like no one really did anything in those games. Like even Kyler Murray, who had a great game in real life, didn't have a great fantasy game. And the week before, I think it was Giants Redskins. Everyone was on the Giants guys. Everyone was playing Daniel Jones, and they didn't do much. And it's really it's kind of like a concept where these guys have played like well fantasy wise. Because they've been in garbage time a lot, and they've been trailing by a lot, so they have to throw, and they produce these great stats, kind of like Matt Ryan has done. But if a bad team is playing against another bad team, they're just going to have a bad game, and that's what we've seen in the two examples I've cited. And I think an example of this week could be Falcons Cardinals. I think a lot of people are expecting Matt Ryan and Kyler Murray to have great games. Just because they have great matchups, but these are two awful teams, and so I don't know if they're going to have great fantasy producers. You might have here and there. You might have like maybe Julio Jones goes off, or maybe Larry Fitzgerald has a great game, or Chase Edmonds, as we discussed earlier. But like they're not. I don't think these guys as a whole are going to have great performances.
That contradicts what you said last week.
Well, that's kind of late in the week. I was thinking about that, and I actually dropped all the Cardinals and Bengals players in my.
Oh wow!
Wow!
I need to call you right at the edge of the moment. I'm going to call you, and or I'll text you and say what's going on here. Oh gosh. Well, let's talk about some of the other favorites that have had some concern, like Tom Brady. I mean, he there was some concern there. What's he looking like this week?
Brady, he was. We talked about his calf last week, and he looked fine. He looked fine against the Redskins. He missed one bad throw. He had Josh Gordon open for a deep touchdown. Would have been like a 60-yard touchdown. It was uncharacteristic of him. So maybe he's still a lingering thing with his calf. He took some sacks in the first half, so maybe his mobility is a bit off. But he looked, for the most part, he looked like himself, I thought, and he had a great fantasy performance. And this week he gets to play the Giants, who have one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Yep. So I love Tom Brady. As you can see, he's my number 3 quarterback. Right. So what do you think, Michael?
I totally agree, and they do a good job of protecting Tom. They don't make him, sling it too far. I think he'll be absolutely fine. I think it's a great matchup, and dude, that's like a ridiculous matchup. But I don't have faith in Daniel Jones for this game, but I think in the future I still do.
Yeah, especially with Daniel Jones missing, Evan Ingram, Sterling Shepard.
Oh God,
Saquon Barkley.
It's going to be brutal.
It's a mash unit for the Giants,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the Patriots are favored by 17 points. And
It's not enough.
I agree.
It's
I,
not-
it might have to be 20.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's gonna be a very ugly game. The only concern I have with Brady this week is if, let's say, for example, Sony Michel runs in a couple of touchdowns and then the defense gets a touchdown. All of a sudden, the Patriots are up 21-0.
Yeah.
Tom Brady doesn't have to throw at all, and then
Very likely.
yeah, and yeah, like that happens. We saw that with Carson Wentz against the Jets. It was a
We
good
saw
match.
that with Aaron Rodgers Sunday. Oh my God.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
It happens, and that's why fantasy is very tough to project. You never know what's going to happen, and you can have a quarterback who doesn't need to throw, and then you're kind of screwed. So, but I think with this matchup, I think in most scenarios, I think Brady beats his median, and I think he has a very good game. So, I'm definitely going to be using him in the showdown slates.
Yeah, and with all that thought, Green Bay, Stafford, and Rodgers is usually a shootout. Is that not what's going to happen on Sunday?
I think that could be another case where the Packers have a lead. I mean, they're
Really?
favored. Yeah,
Wow.
they're favored by about 5 points. So I think more likely than not, I think the Packers have the lead, and then the Lions are trying to play catch up. So, but they both have good defenses.
Yes.
Right. So it could, maybe it's not a shootout because in the past the Packers and Lions have had just pretty porous defenses, but I don't think that's the case this year. They both improved exponentially defensively. Like they're both great. So I think it might be a lower scoring game than people might expect.
Okay, so we've got are we at halftime yet?
Yeah. If we have any
Okay,
questions.
so we don't have anyone actually listening, but maybe just kind of, I think somebody might have dialed in, but I don't even see them here. But I don't have any questions coming in. But this is going to take time to build up. So, we can talk about, I guess, move on to the second half of the show.
Yeah. I posted the link a little late, so I think if we get to promote it on the site earlier, I think that'll definitely help.
And I'll book the link tonight. In fact, the links are already pre-booked for 10 weeks,
Okay.
and I'll just send them to you.
Okay. Sounds good.
Packers Lions will be the shootout. You heard it here first.
Okay.
Packers and Lions shootout. Okay, I'm putting that down. Mike says.
Yeah, could happen. But I think
no.
defense has improved.
Okay, we're back.
All right. To get to the quarterback rankings this week, Deshaun Watson, my number one quarterback against the Chiefs. The Chiefs have a hard defense, so I love him this week. I would play him any chance you can get. Lamar Jackson, again, Cincinnati, just a terrible defense. It's a good chance for Lamar Jackson to go off. Again, the only concern is the Ravens get a bunch of rushing touchdowns, defensive touchdown, and then Lamar Jackson doesn't have to do anything. But that's a risk you can have with any quarterback, really. Tom Brady, we discussed. Patrick Mahomes, number 4. Russell Wilson, number 5 against the Browns, who might be missing both starting cornerbacks again. So just a terrific matchup for Russell Wilson. So I love him every week. Then we have Kyler Murray, number 6. Maybe a little too high based on what I said about the Fool's Gold game, but not there aren't too many options I love this week beyond the top guys. As you can see, Matt Ryan tied with Kyler Murray and Carson Wentz. Matt Ryan, again, I think this is a low projection for him. I've seen Matt Ryan projected for 25, 26 in some other places, so 23 is low for him. He can still have a good game. I think there's a scenario in which Arizona comes out to a big lead, and then Matt Ryan, as usual, has to throw a lot in the second half. So I think that's a possibility. And Andy Dalton might be my sleeper of the week this week. So Andy Dalton is they're going to be behind, but they're going to be playing against a defense that's not very good. Baltimore's defense has declined tremendously this year. They have several defensive backs who are out. They have no pass rush. So I think Andy Dalton in the second half could have a lot of garbage yardage. So I kind of like him this week. I have him projected for 300 yards. So those are my top quarterbacks. Those are my top quarterbacks this week. Michael, what do you think?
I think the Falcons coach is playing for his job, And I think we're going to find out from the Falcons defense, which has been horrible, but they got some decent players, how much they like their coach. I actually think the Falcon defense might rebound this week
Well,
if they want to keep their coach, and that's questionable.
I don't like their defense at all. I mean,
Yeah.
Marcus Mariota torched them with A.J. Brown and Corey Davis. Like, they couldn't stop those guys. And then Will Fuller just went nuts against them last week.
Yeah.
And, Arizona, granted, they don't have a good offensive line, but Atlanta has no pass rush to speak of. And they're really missing Keanu Neal. Like,
Yeah, they are. Yeah, he's one of my favorite players. But if the Falcons don't do well this week, I think their coach is history.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to fire him mid-season like the Redskins.
Really? Because of the owner. Yeah.
Not just that. I think that might be the case, but also he took them to the Super Bowl, so I think they're going to show him more. I think they're going to be more respectable to him.
He blew a 24-point lead.
I mean, yeah, but he still got them there.
Kyle Shanahan got him there.
Yeah, maybe, but maybe that's true. But he still was the head coach of a Super Bowl team, so I think they're going to be more respectable to him than the Redskins were to Jay Gruden. So
that's why we hung on to Mike McCarthy too long.
No, you guys did, absolutely.
Yeah.
But that Aaron Rodgers just didn't get along with him, so I think
nope.
he kind of forced that hand. Anything else from the top quarterbacks?
I think I'm good. I was wondering, what are your thoughts of the Giants quarterback?
Not very good. I have him projected for 14 points. He's going to be going up against Bill Belichick, who is the best coach in the NFL right now, maybe in NFL history. And Bill Belichick has a tremendous record against rookie quarterbacks. He just makes them look bad. We saw Daniel Jones go up against Mike Zimmer, who's another tremendous coach last week. And that was the only big pick I had wrong. And late in the week, I was concerned. In the back of my mind, I'm like, oh my God, am I really playing Daniel Jones against Mike Zimmer? And Mike Zimmer made him look terrible. And Bill Belichick's an even better coach than Mike Zimmer. So
and the injuries are just prohibitive. Everybody's hurt on the Giants offense. So Daniel Jones has no weapons.
Absolutely. If they had Barkley and Ingram and Sterling Shepard, I'd give him a chance to maybe have some garbage yardage at the end and maybe get to 20 fantasy points.
Okay.
But man, I think this is going to be rough for him. He might have several. I haven't projected for 2 turnovers, but that might be low.
It could be the worst game a quarterback has ever been set up for, as long as I can remember.
It's pretty bad.
Well, that's interesting. What are your thoughts on the Cowboys, Dak, and playing in the game?
Yeah, Dak Prescott had a great fantasy performance last week, but it was not a good real life performance. He had a lot of interceptions. I think it was 3. In meaningful action, he was bad. They were down 31-3, and then he ended up with 400 yards because the team was way down. I think it's going to be a different game script this week. Chances are the Cowboys are going to be up on the Jets. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case because the Jets are going to be more competitive this week with Sam Darnold back. But in all likelihood, the Cowboys will be ahead, so Dak Prescott doesn't have to throw. And the Jets have a good defense. The defensive line is great. And if C.J. Mosley, their star linebacker, returns, the Jets are going to catapult into having maybe a top 10 defense. And so I wouldn't trust Dak Prescott this week. I haven't projected for 20 fantasy points, which is just kind of like in the middle there. So I wouldn't go out of my way to play him.
Okay.
I got to give him credit for making a furious comeback, though. They didn't give up. The Cowboys just showed who they were. They had an easy schedule at the beginning of the year, and they finally played a real team. But they didn't give up. So you got to give them credit that they did try to mount a comeback, and they did get a lot of points at garbage time.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if you had him in fantasy, you're definitely going to appreciate that. This is not a game where they're going to be down 31-3. So he's not going to have those kind of stats again. All right. I think we can move on to the
good with the quarterbacks now. I'm good with the quarterbacks. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Alvin Kamara, my number 1 running back. He's projected for 26 points in PPR. The Le'Veon Bell is second place, 25. That might surprise a lot of people. But Le'Veon Bell has been kind of on an island by himself. He's been with Luke Falk, who shouldn't be in the NFL. He's the third string quarterback for the Jets. He's just been terrible. But the Jets are getting Sam Darnold back, and all of a sudden, Darnold's presence means that teams can't load the box against Le'Veon Bell. The Jets are going to be more productive offensively. That means more touches for Le'Veon Bell. That means more red zone opportunities for Le'Veon Bell. I think Bell could have, a kind of maybe not a Christian McCaffrey type game, but maybe a Leonard Fournette type game. And so I think Bell sets up very well this week. If you can trade for him, I would definitely do that, because I think with Sam Darnold back, I think Bell is going to do extremely well. What do you think, Michael?
Well, even more so, because a lot of guys had forgotten Chris Herndon was suspended, and he was supposed to come back this week, which he's got a great connection with Sam Darnold. But the guy injured his hamstring working out on his own. So with no Chris Herndon for Darnold to throw through, I totally agree with you. Le'Veon Bell's the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ezekiel Elliott is next. The Cowboys should have the lead, so Elliott's going to run. It is a tough matchup for him, though. The Jets have a tremendous run defense, but Elliott, if he has the lead, he can get in the end zone once or twice. I have him for 2 touchdowns, so that I like him there. Leonard Fournette, he's interestingly enough, he's run the most routes of any running back in the NFL this year.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's impressive.
Wow,
He's had a great season so far, too.
Yeah, you would think it's Christian McCaffrey, but it's actually Leonard Fournette.
I'll be damned. I did not know that.
Yeah, so Fournette is against the Saints. The Saints linebackers haven't been tested yet this year. They haven't played a good pass-catching back. They had Todd Gurley in week 2, but Gurley, his snaps are limited. They had Elliott in week 3, or week 4, but Elliott, he's not really like that much involved in the passing game as Fournette is. So I think Fournette could have a nice game. Derrick Henry, I think, will go off. 2 weeks ago, we saw Leonard Fournette rush for 225 yards against his Denver defense. I love Henry this week. He always has great upside, so he's someone you always want to use in daily fantasy in good matchups. Mark Ingram, I think he has a good chance to run all over Cincinnati. Cincinnati's defense is just very porous. Then Christian McCaffrey, maybe a little controversial here that I have him this low. I mean, he's not someone I would recommend sitting, because he's my number 7 running back. But Christian McCaffrey is going against Tampa's defense, which is just tremendous.
And he got hurt doing the hurdle.
He did. I mean, he was off the field for a little bit. And Tampa's defense, they shut down McCaffrey in week 2. They shut down Alvin Kamara. They shut down Saquon Barkley. These are the top running backs in the NFL. They get McCaffrey again. I'm not very bullish on this. I would still play him, like I said, but in daily fantasy, he's someone I would avoid. In the showdown slate that you can play Sunday morning, I'm not going to have McCaffrey in my top lineup.
Well said.
Thanks. Then we have Dalvin Cook, another tough matchup, but he's going to be involved in the passing game, so I think you still have to use him. Nick Chubb, good matchup. Not a great matchup, but it seems like a decent matchup against Seattle. And then Kerryon Johnson, we know what Green Bay's run defense is, so I think he has a chance to go off, provided Detroit stays within striking distance, unlike Dallas. So what do you think about the top 10, Mike?
I think you're right on.
Okay. Kim, do you anything stand out?
No, I'm still learning about how to pick a good running back. So I'm listening very intensely on how you guys are doing this, and
check the defense. Check the defense. How they're rating against running backs.
That's what I've been writing down. Is who is the defense?
You can usually check that on the websites if you're in a draft league. You can just put your cursor and they'll show you how they rate against the run.
Okay.
Yeah, and also on I don't know if FanDuel does this, because I don't use FanDuel, but on DraftKings, if you're in the lineup screen, next to each player they'll show the matchup strength.
Okay.
So you'll be able to see that right there. So you can just tell, without even doing any research, you'll be able to tell. Granted, there's some nuance to it, and sometimes a team will have a positive matchup on someone. For example, this week we'll get to tight ends in a bit, but Delaney Walker for the Titans is playing Denver. And on DraftKings, they say that he has the 6th toughest matchup of all tight ends. But if you delve into it, Denver's defense hasn't played any good tight ends this year except for Darren Waller in week 1. And Darren Waller went off against them. So I think this is kind of a situation where the stat is misleading. And I favor Walker this week. I like him a lot, despite what DraftKings says with this ranking. So you can't like fully trust the rankings, but for the most part, I think they're on point.
Right, and when a guy doesn't do well against a low-ranked team, like Walt said last week, Arizona can't cover tight ends, and Tyler Eifert did nothing. It's time to say goodbye to Tyler Eifert.
Yeah, I think so. I agree with you there. I'm not going to use Eifert. He almost got a touchdown, but they knocked the ball away. So that may have changed the whole thing. I was pretty tilted when that happened.
Yeah.
All right.
Got it.
Any other running backs standing out? I guess like Chris Carson, good matchup against the Browns. We just saw what the 49er backs did. Aaron Jones, he'll take a step back against Detroit.
Yeah, agreed.
For sure.
So Aaron Jones isn't really on your top list.
I think he's 12. So
12,
I mean, he's talented. Like in most cases, in year-long leagues, you're not going to sit him, but in daily fantasy, you're probably not going to play him.
Right.
He's Monday night anyway, so he's not on the main slate anyhow.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between the two, between daily and year-long leagues. Absolutely. If you draft the guy, you got a high draft pick and invest in a guy. You don't have another running back you can start instead of him, so you got to roll with him.
Okay.
It's different.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's the beauty of daily fantasy is if you draft a bad team or if you draft a team in the summer and your top 2 guys get injured and like all of a sudden your team's not going to win. But in daily fantasy, you can just come back if you have a bad week. You just come back with a new group of players, and you might win. So there's that.
Kind of like the idea of picking a new team every week.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It really is. All right, let's get to the wide receivers. DeAndre Hopkins, my number 1 receiver, followed by Julio Jones. So I mentioned these 2 guys earlier as buy low candidates. I think these guys are going to bounce back at some point, and they could go off for like 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. So you definitely don't want to miss that in year long or daily. So like I said, try to acquire them in year long. Play them in daily. Like just don't avoid these guys. They have tremendous potential. Cooper Kupp is next. I discussed that the 49ers, the way you attack them is via the slot receiver. And I think with Brandon Cooks potentially missing this game with a concussion, Jared Goff might target Cooper Kupp even more than usual. So Cooper Kupp has been great. So I would definitely play him. Tyler Boyd, maybe this is a little high for him, but against the Ravens, they've been atrocious against slot receivers this year, and they're missing their slot corner, so it's not a surprise that they've been so bad in that regard. So I think with the garbage time I mentioned with Andy Dalton, you could see Tyler Boyd have a big game, especially in the second half when they're throwing a lot. Amari Cooper is next. The Jets' corners are the weakness of that defense. So I think Cooper just has a good matchup, so I like him. Chris Godwin, the last time he played the Panthers, he went off. The Panthers have a good defense, but they don't defend slot receivers well. It's another team that doesn't defend slot receivers well. So I like Chris Godwin. He plays Sunday morning, so he's someone you could have as a captain in that showdown slate. You have Keenan Allen, always going to be one of the top guys. Tyreek Hill's practicing, so we'll see what happens. Yeah, I mean, if Hill's back, he's one of the most talented receivers in the NFL. So if he plays, you have to insert him in your lineup right away. Then we have Devontae Adams. We don't know if the Packers haven't practiced yet this week, so we'll see what happens there. And then Tyler Lockett, against the Browns and their cornerbacks. As I said before, their top 2 corners probably might be out again. So Lockett could rebound. So those are the top 10. Michael, anything stand out?
After what happened to me this week, when it comes to wide receivers, I've forgotten how to speak English.
What happened, Michael? Tell us. Share.
Well, I got killed with Mike Evans and Julio Jones, and I just couldn't win no matter what I did. Yeah. So, sometimes that happens. You got the top receivers, and they can't do anything. And what can you do about it? That's fantasy football.
Yep. But I think that just means you have to go back to them.
Yep.
You can't let recency bias make
Yeah.
you change your strategy. I think
Right.
that's bad.
Yep.
So I like them. I at least like Julio this week. We haven't gotten to Mike Evans yet. He's right here, so he's in the middle. This is not a great matchup for him, but he's talented, and this is definitely an easier matchup than he had against New Orleans. So
I hate divisional matchups, though. The teams know each other. It's just really tough.
You're right. I mean, it is tough, but he's still in my top 20. He's still someone I would play, so yeah, I guess someone else. Two other guys to touch on. Odell Beckham. He's another guy that I think
Yeah.
you should buy low on.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Oh.
mean, he was going against Richard Sherman last week, and Richard Sherman, he wasn't quite himself last year because he was coming off that injury. Richard Sherman's back to his old self. He looks phenomenal, and Sherman just shut him down. This week, Beckham might be going against Shaq Griffin, but the Seahawks don't shadow their cornerbacks. So Odell Beckham, if the Browns want to get him more involved, they can do it. And so
Yeah, well, there's going to have to be short passes because Baker doesn't have time to throw.
that's true, but Seattle's pass rush isn't all that great. Like we just saw Baker go against San Francisco, and as I said before, I love San Francisco's defense.
Yeah.
But remember the week before they were going against Baltimore,
Yeah.
and Baltimore's defense doesn't rush the quarterback well. I think their pass rush is kind of equal to Seattle's. So
Right.
I think there's a chance that Baker Mayfield bounces back, and
Okay.
if he does, then Odell Beckham will bounce back as well.
Okay.
Another guy, Michael Thomas, he was tremendous last week. I still like him this week. He's my number 13 receiver, but I think he takes a bit of a step back. Jacksonville's defense is much better than Tampa's in terms of covering receivers. Thomas is a great player, so he's still going to produce, but I don't think his upside is as high this week.
Okay.
Okay, so I mean, Michael or Kim, any questions or any comments on the receivers?
Nope, I'm learning on this one as well. So the quarterback seems easy, right? Everybody kind of knows who the quarterback. Everything's focused on them. And all of these other players is kind of like a chessboard. You kind of got to figure out what's going on with them, where they're at, and how to move them and play them.
Yeah.
Do your defenses.
Yeah, and a strategy I talked about last week is pairing the quarterback with two receivers. And so if you did that with Deshaun Watson, with DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller, you did extremely well. So that's something you could definitely do. I know the top guy, the guy who won the $1 million contest this week on DraftKings, Teddy Bridgewater was the starting quarterback, and he paired him with Michael Thomas and the tight end Jared Cook. So that's definitely a strategy that a lot of the professionals use. So that's something I would do. And furthermore, if you do that, if you stack a team together, I would stack the other side because you need a shootout to probably win a big tournament. So this guy who had Bridgewater, Michael Thomas, and Jared Cook, he also had Calvin Ridley. Or not Calvin Ridley. He had Chris Godwin from the same game.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was a 4-player stack from the same team. I've even heard professionals like using 5-player stacks from the same team, and even 6-player stacks from the same team.
Wow.
If it makes sense, like you don't want to put in nonsense players who don't make sense, but if it's a logical lineup, I think that's a strategy you should definitely do.
Okay, so I heard Watson and Hopkins, which were the first two I already had written down for my pick, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But who was the third one? Because I was kind of looking at Cooper.
It's Will Fuller.
Will Fuller went off last week. Yeah.
Yeah, Will Fuller was the captain in the lineup that I did very well in last week.
Okay.
And Walt predicted that ahead of time.
Yeah, I loved Will Fuller going into the last week. He did nothing the first 4 weeks of the season, but he was so close. Like if you watch the film of every game, Deshaun Watson was nearly hit him for multiple 80-yard touchdowns, and he was just a bit off. And it was because Deshaun Watson didn't have the pass protection in the pocket to get the ball to him.
Right.
Deshaun Watson was playing this past week. He was playing against Atlanta, and Atlanta doesn't rush the quarterback well. So I thought there was a chance that Watson would have time to find Fuller downfield, and Fuller scored 3 touchdowns. And I think it's the same thing this week. They're playing against the Chiefs, who don't rush the quarterback at all, especially with Chris Jones out. Chris Jones is their best defensive lineman. So Deshaun Watson's going to have even more time than usual. So I love Watson, as I said before, showed before, he's my number one quarterback. So I would pair him with again, Hopkins and Fuller. And then I'll play on someone on the other side with the Chiefs. Maybe it's Tyreek Hill, maybe Damian Williams, maybe it's Travis Kelce, the tight end. We'll get to him in a second. Might as well go to the tight ends. Travis Kelce is the number one tight end. He's the best player at that position. So maybe you run it back with Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. Maybe you just go nuts and have a five players stacked in the same game. That could be a winning strategy this week.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So I like Kelce. I mean, obviously he's going to be a top play. He's the most expensive tight end on DraftKings by a wide margin. There's no one near him. And then we have Hooper and Kittle. I think a lot of people are going to play these guys this week, and rightfully so. Hooper has the same matchup that Tyler Eifert did against Arizona. So I have more faith in Austin Hooper panning out than Tyler Eifert. I mean, Hooper has been tremendous this year, and it's something we discussed last week where Matt Ryan doesn't have a lot of time in the pocket, and so he needs to throw shorter routes, and Hooper is going to catch those shorter routes. So that's why Hooper has been doing very well this year, and he has a great matchup. So you have to play him. George Kittle against the Rams. The Rams don't play against tight ends well, so you have to love George Kittle. Then we have Zach Ertz, who's one of the most talented tight ends in the NFL, and he's getting a lot of double teams this year, but he's going to break out eventually. He's just way too good not to. Then we have Mark Andrews against Cincinnati's defense. Cincinnati, I think, has the worst linebackers in the NFL, so that just bodes very well for Mark Andrews. This Greg Olsen we discussed earlier. I like Olsen this week. Then we have Will Dissly, who's Will Dissly's interesting to me because he's priced right near Austin Hooper and George Kittle, and I don't project him as highly, but everyone is going to play either Hooper or Kittle. And I think Will Dissly could be a guy who's owned in like 1% of DraftKings lineups. And if Will Dissly has like a 2-touchdown game, which is definitely a possibility, like you could have great leverage on the field if you have Will Dissly, because I don't think anyone's going to own him.
Right.
So I like him there. Delaney Walker, I mentioned earlier, a great matchup against Denver. Denver's defense. He's the cheapest of all these tight ends. Actually, I don't know what Greg Olsen's price off the top of my head is, but Delaney Walker is cheaper than all the other tight ends I mentioned. Then Evan Ingram should be dropped. I didn't get to that news yet, so don't play Evan Ingram. He's probably not going to play. And then Jimmy Graham, he could have a decent game. Not a great matchup, but he's okay. So those are the top 10 tight ends. Michael, what do you think?
Well, O.J. Howard might be worthwhile if you can count baseball games.
Yeah, does that count? You get 1 point for a reception.
Yeah.
I don't think you get the yardage, but you should get a point for the reception.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
I would worry about Andrews and Olsen maybe being hurt, but again, Olsen did okay against the Bucs last time, so I'd still roll Olsen. Andrews, I got a red flag on him, so if I was going to pick, I'd actually put Olsen a little bit ahead of Andrews.
That makes sense. Yeah, I might end up putting Olsen ahead. I might end up moving Andrews down. That matchup against those linebackers is very appealing because they lost Vontaze Burfict and they never replaced him, and those guys can't cover at all.
Right.
So no one in Cincinnati can cover, so it's just a bad situation.
Yep.
So those are the tight ends. I don't know if you want to discuss defenses. I don't have defenses in my spreadsheet, but I would definitely target the 49ers defense. They're not even that expensive on DraftKings. They're $2,700. So I think they're definitely worth using.
Cowboys.
I'm not too high on the Cowboys, to be honest with you,
Really?
because Sam Darnold is back, and I think Darnold.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So if they were playing against Luke Falk, I would completely agree with you. Like definitely pay for Dallas, but against Darnold, I think I wouldn't use Dallas, and Dallas is pretty expensive. I think they're at $3,400.
Oh yeah, I agree with you then.
Yeah. The 49ers are only $2,700, and I think that's great. If you want to go very cheap defense, the Jets are only $1,500, and the Jets front seven is, if they have C.J. Mosley back, that front seven is excellent, and they're playing.
They got a blueprint from the Packers,
Yeah, and they're going to be playing against the Dallas team that might be missing both of its starting tackles. And we've seen Dak Prescott be a little loosey-goosey with the ball last week. He was throwing it to the other team quite often, and and plus Dallas might be looking ahead to Philadelphia. So I don't think we're going to I don't think we're going to see Dallas's A game. And so only 1,500. I think the Jets are definitely worth the play. They're going to be my number one owned defense this week.
Great stuff, Walter.
Thank you.
That is awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, this has been a good rundown, and I've actually picked some players on my own this week with your help.
Awesome. Yeah,
I'm getting excited about this.
Yeah, hopefully you get to enter this week, and
I am. I'm going to work on it tonight. Yeah. So I've got Watson. I've got wide receiver for Hopkins, wide receiver Will Fuller, tight end Kelsey, and tight end I'm going to go for Will Desley.
So you can run
I'm
two tight ends.
I'm going to try him. Yeah.
They have a flex option, so you can run two tight ends. It's a strategy I've heard that is pretty good. So because not a lot of people do it, so you're going to have a unique lineup.
Yeah.
If you play in a contest with 500,000 people, you need to be a little unique, you know. Yep. So that's one way to do it for sure.
Okay.
All right.
Well, this is a lot of fun, guys. And we don't have any people for wrap-up questioning, so maybe we should do a wrap-up. Michael, who are you going to pick?
Oh, I don't do daily. I'm into the leagues, and
okay.
I can't top the advice Walter's given this week. It's absolutely fantastic.
Right. The advice is just really good, and I get really excited about learning about all of this because I have been watching the games and trying to watch the football players and the injuries. So, no, this is great. So I guess next week, guys?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. If someone I will pick, I mentioned the Deshaun Watson lineups that we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
I might have some just kind of try to be different and have an Andy Dalton lineup, put him with Tyler Boyd and Auden Tate, and then run it back with maybe Mark Andrews or Marquise Brown. And, Teddy Bridgewater took down $1 million. Someone put.
That's a good point. Yep.
Someone put Bridgewater as their quarterback, and he won $1 million. So anything can happen in fantasy football. That's why it's so great, and also a little frustrating at the same time. But it's all fun. So
that's what makes it
fun.
fun.
So right now, your top picks are Andy Dalton and Adam.
Well, no, I mean, no, I would say Watson is my number one quarterback.
Watson.
He's going to be my number one owned quarterback for sure.
Right.
Fantasy. I mean, I put together like 300 lineups. So
I was talking about a long shot pick that lottery ticket.
Right. Dalton will be in like 2% of my lineups and just try to hit a home run with him, because he's probably going to strike out more often. But I think he has high upside this week, but a very low floor. And I think those are the kind of guys you want in daily fantasy. You want to just swing for the fences because you're playing against 200,000 to 500,000 people, and you have to be different. And not a lot of people are going to have Dalton, so I think that's one way you can be different.
That's a good idea. I hadn't thought about that. I will mix that in. It's kind of like the horse races, right? You kind of got to pick unique sometimes, not the way everybody else picks.
Yeah, I'm not a horse racing aficionado, but that sounds good to me. I guess.
Well, if you're going to win big, you got to be different. So, all right, this is awesome. I'm excited, and I'll probably be texting you on Friday. Any changes?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
WalterFootball.com.
On WalterFootball.com, we're gonna have updated fantasy rankings.
Absolutely.
Every day, you can see on the page when it's updated. So any breaking injury news, I'll be updating all the way through Sunday morning around noon. So noon is usually when I have my final update. So with the inactives and actives on Sunday morning at 11:30. So.
Yep.
Definitely check back. If I may, I would like to promote something very quickly.
Oh, please do. This is great about this.
All right. So, so I don't know if you guys can see this. Safety and a Field Goal. I wrote a book, and
cool.
I just published it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Will you send me send me a link of where you are, selling it, and we'll put the link on here as well. And I'll put the cover. Up here. So tell us about the book.
Yeah.
It's called A Safety and a Field Goal. So a safety is 2 points, field goal is 3 points, so it's 5 points. So it's a top 5 football list of various things. So, for example, top 5 draft busts of all time, top 5 what if scenarios, top 5 players to never play in the Super Bowl. And I even have some personal things like top 5 funniest fantasy football moments I've had in my leagues.
Cool.
So a bunch of top 5 lists. So it was fun to write. It's 217 pages, so you can go through it pretty quickly. So yeah, it's called A Safety and a Field Goal. So yeah, it's on Amazon. So
yeah, I'll have to check it out. I'd love to get an autographed copy from you. I've got a bookshelf full of, that's what I collect. And I love reading. I read all the time, so this is exciting, and it might give me some insight on how you do this. I don't suppose Miami's in there as the top 5 worst.
Well, I wrote it before this season, so I didn't get a chance to do that in. So if I have a second edition, maybe they'll make it.
Well, believe me, if you write one book, you'll be writing another. They seem to trail each other. A second book always follows. So congratulations.
Yeah.
When did it go on the shelves?
Yesterday. So
wow.
Actually, no, it's Sunday. It's Sunday, and I ordered it just to make sure it looked good, and it came yesterday. And yeah, the company that formatted it did a good job, great job. So
who did your work for you?
I forget what the formatting company was called. The Pagaris Studio or something like that. You could probably Google them. It wasn't very expensive either. It was very cheap, and they did it very quickly. It took them 4 or 5 days to format the whole thing. So it was very quick. I thought the guy who did the artwork on the cover did a good job, I think. So
it was beautiful. The colors and everything were beautiful.
Thanks. Yeah.
What's the back? Hold up and show us the back.
The back is just kind of just some words.
Okay. Does it have your bio?
A little bit, yeah, at the bottom. Yeah.
Okay. So I will put it up for sale if you want me to. I'll put a link on IBM TV. We sell books.
Okay,
so
that'd be great.
I'll put a link up there. So I can't wait to get my copy. And
awesome.
This is awesome.
Yeah, great. All right,
congrats.
Thank you. So that's it for this week. So you can go to walterfootball.com for, as I said, updated fantasy rankings. We also have picks, a mock draft, tons of content. So yeah, that's it for this week. So tell us who you're going to have in your fantasy lineup. So who are you going to pick? Who are you going to play in daily fantasy? Who you're going to trade? Who are you going to get rid of? So this is a big week, I think, for fantasy football, because some teams might be 2 and 3, and you need a win to stay afloat. So I will talk to you guys next week.
All right. See you next week. Take care.
All right. Bye.